Okay, so it's impossible to talk about A Hat in Time without mentioning the elephant in the room. This huge, green, elephant-sized stack of money that was used to create the game from Kickstarter. Every Kickstarter is like a really old washing machine. You can throw in as much as you can, but sometimes it will just mix all your colors together and you'll end up disappointed and kinda pissed. That being said, Kickstarter games have a reputation for not living up to their promises and sometimes even scamming their backers, taking their money and never delivering. There are exceptions to this, of course, like the brilliant Shovel Knight, the fun and fast-paced Superhot, the gripping and addictive Darkest Dungeon, and Undertale. However, Yogventures and Mighty No. 9 are probably the best examples of pretty terrible Kickstarters. And from that, it's cast a lot of doubt on crowdfunding in general. I mean, you had Yooka-Laylee come out to mixed to negative reception, which many, including myself, were looking to actually be a good Kickstarter project. Side note here for a second, did you know that JonTron is in A Hat in Time as a small cameo?
We're only insured for bird staff. Letting you in would be a liability. Don't even think about sneaking inside.
Yep, and no one is getting mad over it or really even acknowledging it. It's almost as if it would be a really bad business decision to remove a popular YouTuber from your game so close to launch. Anyways, A Hat in Time, if you couldn't tell from my blatantly cliche setup, breaks the norm and delivers an actually good, complete experience. The story of this game is fairly simple and, like most great platformers, just exists to give your adventure some purpose. One day you're just chilling in your spaceship until a mafia member comes knocking on your window. In space. He tells you, Hat Kid, that he's collecting a toll since you're passing by Mafia Town. Refusing to pay the fine, the Mafia debt collector smashes the window and all your fuel tanks, in the form of hourglasses known as timepieces, go flying across space and you have to go collect them lest you remain floating forever in space. These are your main MacGuffins you have to build up stock of throughout your playthrough, as they can be used to unlock different worlds, which furthers your progress. Each world has their own set of characters and subplot, which always ties into your overarching objective. It's a pretty standard structure as far as 3D collectathons go, but what negates all this potential tedium is how unique of a feel each world's narrative will be. In the first world, as an example, you encounter a person named Mustache Girl, who you initially find and try to help bring down the mafia with. It's neat because when you first interact with her and further her revolutionary cause, you're shown this meter of relationship status filled halfway to show that you two are pals. After you help the mafia clear out the town of lava, Mustache Girl gets agitated and berates you for not turning the mafia into jars of flesh like she wanted. The same relationship menu appears and then the progress bar goes far left off screen, showing that you're now enemies. Oh, and then she mugs you. It's kind of hilarious, and the talented voice acting only makes the interactions you have with other characters that much better. I think my favorite interaction has to be in the spooky world, where you're led down a path by a cute ghost, only to be caught in a trap and forced to sell your soul and do the devil's dirty work. Whoever did the ghost overlord in this scene was so enthusiastically menacing, and I loved it. Though it's kind of weird in retrospect how two platformers, Cuphead and now A Hat in Time, have a main focus of their narrative being forced to sell their souls to the devil. Is it a metaphor for contractual obligations in the industry, or is it based off of personal experience? Who knows? There's also another plotline where two movie production companies are fighting, and it's really entertaining to see some corporate arguments over petty stuff like it's presented here. It might sound serious as I'm presenting it to you, what with the mafia selling your soul and capitalism, but I promise you, it's lighthearted and silly. A Hat in Time doesn't take itself seriously, which allows you to loosen up and just enjoy the ride. As for the presentation, it's bright and colorful, further adding to this wonderfully laid-back vibe. Bloom was turned up to the max for the most part, and I think overall it looks pretty decent. I love how varied all the environments can be, whether that be in a movie studio, in a town controlled by the mafia, or in a spooky land. The visuals have come a long way since the alpha, and the texture work is great. In addition to how the game looks during gameplay, there's these distinct title cards for just about every act, and I love how they're illustrated. It's always quirky and interesting. My only complaint is from the more technical side of things. See, some models just look off. I mean, every character is well designed, but some texture work looks a bit too clay-like in a sense. They went for the Wind Waker HD approach to modeling entities, which works, but in different light sources or up close it can look mediocre. Mouths and eyes weren't textured into models, but rather they're just sorta glued on. It can sometimes look disjointed. In cutscenes, you can see eyes clipping over when they're supposed to be closed, or with characters often clipping into environments. I hate to use this terminology, but I couldn't shake it off throughout my entire playthrough. A lot of A Hat in Time gives off this unprofessional sense of texturing. There's a lot of little mistakes like the clipping, like when you dive into a bunch of pillows and can see right inside them like you're swimming through water, like how some models look weird in different lighting, and as a final example, in the opening cutscene you get a shot of Hat Kid's underside, which is just really strange. Now, I did also experience frame rate dips here and there, which was odd since I have a pretty powerful PC and never had any issues like this before with other games. I tried to ignore most of these as just tiny flaws in an otherwise good game, but they just added up over time and I couldn't escape these feelings. Don't get me wrong, overall I think the art style is great, and I think the environments are all unique enough so that they never become too dull to explore around in. It's just these tiny nitpicks that add up over the course of my playthrough that I wasn't a big fan of. What I do love unconditionally, however, is the soundtrack. Composed by Grant Kirkhope and Pascal Michael Stiefel, every track perfectly conveys the bouncy, jovial nature of this game. Most are laid back and some are bombastic when they need to. If you didn't tell me this was Kirkhope, I would have never known because unlike his work on Yooka-Laylee, this doesn't go for the banjo sound. There's a wide variety of instruments, tempos, and sound. Tracks like Rainier Mafia Town are delightful and focused on acoustic guitar and other string instruments. It's sometimes hard to describe why you like the music you do, but I do know I enjoyed all of this soundtrack for different reasons. I loved how groovy and sinister sounding the track Mafia HQ sounded with its sly saxophone licks and smooth piano background melodies. The track The Stubborn Forest is largely piano emphasized, with initially you getting a more happy sort of feel from it with major chord progressions, which is undercut by minor chord melodies. It captures this feeling of the whimsical nature of Hat Kid's adventure, as well as a spooky, foreboding something or other looming in the background. I love how the songs were composed and performed. Kudos to the gentleman above for producing such amazing music. It adds a lot to exploring and collecting timepieces. Speaking of collecting, this is a 3D collectathon, so get ready to do a lot of that, but in a good way. Modern 3D collectathons that are actually fun and engaging are hard to come by, so I'm happy to say that A Hat in Time delivers. You just explore a bunch of different worlds with your main objective being different every time, depending on the act you choose. Worlds are open, so you can take your time for the most part to explore every nook and cranny for secrets and collectibles. Most of the time, you'll be dealing with collecting gems that can be used as a sort of currency to purchase badges from this glitched out monster. Badges are perks that you can equip to enhance Hat Kid's abilities, like one where you can ride around on a scooter, another where you can attract collectibles to you if you're in the vicinity of them, and a whole lot of others. This badge system encourages you to keep collecting the gems, as pointless as they might seem at first, since you want to expand your arsenal of abilities. It's fun to see what different badges will do and how effective they can be in actual gameplay. I love the level of customization that's possible through this system. It gives you a real sense of progression as you get the badges you want by collecting more and more gems, which is only further exacerbated by the other collectible, yarns and hats. These yarn balls will be more out of the way, resulting in you having to do some platforming trick or a world-specific task to get them. This might involve simply conquering a platforming challenge or breaking ice cages with exploding fruit that you can get from absorbing spirits. Yarn balls are used to unlock a bunch of different hats. See, the different hats give Hat Kid different abilities when you press the back trigger. With the speed hat, my favorite of the bunch, you can sprint fast, which makes moving around the world that much more fast-paced. With the ice hat, you can do a ground pound that damages enemies, but also allows Hat Kid to travel long distances as you ground pound on springboards. With the brewing hat, you can toss exploding potions that can blow up special containers, or just to murder everything around you. Needless to say, these hats further spice up the platforming. You can switch switch between all your hats on a whim, so never does it become tedious to have to switch hats to do some hat-centric task or anything like that. Plus, switching between hats temporarily slows down gameplay so that enemies won't get cheap shots between you fiddling with your hat inventory. It's smart design, and levels are crafted in a way that incentivizes you to use your hats to open up new, exciting pathways to collect more and more so that you can have more hats and more abilities. Fun is heavily emphasized over scripted segments. In fact, you can skip the first sequence with Mustache Girl in the first world if you run up a wall and ignore her. I did this initially by accident just because I thought I was supposed to explore, but it turns out this is what the game wants you to do. Sometimes you might not think you have the right hat for the job to get a certain collectible, but usually with exploiting some movement, you can get hats you probably weren't meant to get at that point. This is another huge part of A Hat in Time I'm in love with, the movement. Basically, you can jump, dive, but also cancel this dive with A. You can jump and lunge at enemies with X, but the addition of different hats, badges, and other abilities earned along the way will slightly change Hat Kid's moveset. Much of the movement is simple, but you can pull off some impressive feats if you're skilled enough with the controls. It's tight and responsive, which makes it altogether seem better paced. If you want to go fast, you have the opportunity to, and if you want to take it a little slower, you can. I always love the thrill of jumping from platform to platform by double jumping, then diving and canceling. It's exhilarating because you never know if you're going to fail at the movement or succeed. At first, I couldn't figure out some of the more complex parts of Hat Kid's moveset, but the first world gives you all the time you need to experiment with the movement in a controlled environment. Not much will kill you in Mafia Town. There aren't even instant kill planes like there are in other collectathons. You can dive around all you want, you can try to learn different, more complicated moveset techniques, or you can just walk around and casually explore. The level design is brilliantly constructed so that you want to traverse the entire environment. You want to find those yarn balls and other collectibles scattered everywhere. I found myself becoming so engrossed with this exploration that I would often ignore the main objective for a long while. I'd sometimes forget that each act has its own self-contained mission to get a timepiece because of how fun it is to test out your movement and see what lies beyond. After my first hour, I had beaten Mafia World with a bunch of timepieces in hand, not even remembering that there were a bunch of other worlds I needed to get through. I usually don't complete collectathons because I don't see the point of finding out-of-place garbage that mostly nets you no reward. I'm looking at you, the controversial blue coin mission. But here, I wasn't driven to explore and collect everything I could by some reward. I was simply just having fun playing around in every world I was in. Whether that be frantically trying to avoid racking up fees in this movie studio world, or doing the ghost bidding, I was feeling happy. Just a childlike sense of joy that's easy to get into. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with A Hat in Time. Sure, there are some visual quirks that I wasn't crazy about, but it doesn't ruin the game totally. I think the music, the gameplay, and the lighthearted narrative features trump any detriment that you could possibly have. It's well designed and fun to play. For $30, I don't think I need to recommend a price drop or sale. Check it out on Steam, Xbox One, or PS4. Now, if only it were coming to the Nintendo Switch, then I could play this game on the toilet like all good games were meant to be played. If you like 3D collectathons, you'll love A Hat in Time. I think it's worth your time. I know October is a busy month for games, but this one should definitely be put on your list. As always, though, if you disagree or agree with me, let me know in the comment section below. I'm always willing to have a chat if you're willing to give me the time and not the anger. Thank you so much for watching and take care. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.